Hello everyone, Dr. Polaris here. To continue where we left off in the previous episode, I'll now be focusing on the diverse modern bovine genus Bos, as well as some of its extinct relatives, belonging to the clade Bovina, which probably diverged from the true buffaloes of Boubalina at least 10 million years ago during the late Miocene. The genus Bos comprises up to 10 living species of cattle. Pre-domestication, these were native to Eurasia and North America, as well as parts of North Africa, including forms such as the yaks, the gaur, and the formidable now extinct aurochs, which was the wild ancestor of the domestic taurine, zebu, and sanga cattle. Traditionally, the bison of Europe and North America were placed in their own separate genus, also called bison, but modern genetic testing has strongly suggested that they should now be included within Bos instead. Exactly how, when and where this genus first evolved remains controversial. There are many extinct genera within the clade Bovina, although for the majority of them there is very little information about them online. These include poorly known forms such as Agerobos and Ermiabos, as well as the far better known Pelarovis, with a name meaning monstrous sheep due to the fact that it was initially thought to have been a massive caprine. This genus contained up to 4 species and was endemic to Africa, first appearing about 2.5 million years ago during the early Pleistocene, with modestly sized forms such as P. howelli. This bovine was still quite similar to modern Bos species, but still possessed notable differences, such as a slightly lighter build, an elongated skull, and widely spanning half-moon-shaped horns. While early species were modestly sized, later forms such as P. oldoiensis were larger than the living Cape buffalo, with this animal being a specialised grazer that lived in what is now Kenya alongside early members of the genus Homo. It's sometimes been argued that Pelarovis may simply represent a subset of the genus Bos, with species like the aurochs directly evolving from it in Africa. However, this claim is controversial, with it more often being found that Bos likely evolved in southern Asia below the Himalayas. This region contains the highest number of bovine species alive today, which adds weight to this theory. Modern species can be divided into 3 major lineages, which probably diverged from each other during the late Pliocene around 3 million years ago. These include the aurochs group, which unsurprisingly contains the extinct aurochs Bos primigenius and its domestic descendants, the southern Asian gaur and its relatives, and finally the bison clade, which also likely includes the yaks. As I already have an entire video on this channel devoted to the aurochs, I won't go over its history again here in great detail. In short, this large wild bovine was native to much of Eurasia and North Africa during the Pleistocene, and survived long into the Holocene, with the last individuals sadly dying out in the 17th or perhaps even the 18th century in Eastern Europe. It was an adaptable animal with a huge range, with feeding preferences similar to modern domestic cattle, being capable of both grazing and browsing. Males were significantly larger than females, with the most massive Pleistocene individuals standing over 6 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing up to 1.5 metric tons. Bulls were generally black with a light stripe running along the back, while cows were a reddish-brown colour and possessed small udders like other wild cattle species. The domesticated taurine, zebu and sanga cattle were descendants of this species. While the ultimate origins of the aurochs lineage is uncertain, it's often thought that it developed from Bos acutifrons, a species that was endemic to the Pleistocene of India. First appearing about 2.58 million years ago, this animal possessed an enormous pair of curved horns, which extended horizontally and terminated in downward-facing tips. B. acutifrons, as well as all other members of the genus Bos, probably developed from the widespread Leptobos, which was native to much of Eurasia during the late Pliocene to the early Pleistocene. While it's often stated that this genus was only ancestral to living bison, given the relatively recent shake-up of the phylogeny of Bos, it seems like a good candidate for a common ancestor of all modern members of Bovina, producing up to 8 species, with a range that stretched from the Iberian Peninsula to China. This modestly sized bovine weighed about 320 kilograms or 710 pounds on average, and possessed a slender build. Their skulls were relatively long and narrow, with only males having horn cores. The different species were found in a variety of ecosystems that range from temperate forests to open grassland. While the aurochs is thought to descend from the Indian Bos acutifrons, the ancestors of the bison lineage also emerged in southern Asia at around the same time, circa 2.6 million years ago. As mentioned earlier, It was once argued that bison should be placed in their own genus, although recent studies have overturned this view, with bison now being reduced to a subgenus within Bos. The most basal members of this clade are actually the wild and domestic yaks, which have been revealed by genetic testing to be the sister group to bison. The wild yak is classified as Bos mutus. In modern times, these cold-adapted bovines are native to the high-altitude grasslands of the Tibetan Plateau, as well as parts of Ladakh and Xinjiang province. However, during the earlier Holocene, these animals possessed a significantly wider range, reaching up into Siberia to the east of Lake Baikal, inhabiting large areas of what is now Bhutan, Mongolia, and the Central Asian states. During the late Pleistocene, wild yak could also be found across the eastern mammoth steppe, with potential yak-like bovines being present in Alaska and the Yukon. The oldest remains attributed to Bos mutus hail from early Pleistocene deposits in Almaty, Kazakhstan. Wild yaks are large, heavily built cattle, possessing long shaggy coats with a dense woolly undercoat that provides effective insulation from the cold. These are often dark brown to black in colour, while their muzzles are grey. Bulls can reach 2 metres or 6 feet 6 inches tall at the shoulder, and weigh up to 1.2 metric tons or 2,500 pounds. Living in female-dominated herds, with a smaller number of associated bulls, these animals are inhabitants of treeless alpine tundra and feed on grasses and sedges. Their main predators are Himalayan wolves and humans, although calves are occasionally hunted by snow leopards and bears. This animal was also the ancestor of the domestic yak Bos gruniens. Found across the Himalayas, the Tibetan Plateau and northwards into Siberia, this hardy animal is a very important aspect of many local cultures, providing both meat, milk, transport and dung, which can be dried and used as fuel for fires. With a stocky build and dense coats that come in a variety of colours, these bovines are smaller and lighter than their wild relatives. They are well adapted for cold, high-altitude environments, having larger hearts and lungs than domestic cattle, as well as a greater capacity for transporting oxygen via their blood. Their sister group contains the modern bison species as well as their extinct relatives. These originated in what is now India during the early Pleistocene, with forms such as Bison shivalensis and the slightly younger B. paleosinensis from China circa 2.6 million years ago. From here, early basal forms spread across Eurasia, giving rise to B. georgicus, which is native to the country of Georgia in the Caucasus about 1.7 million years ago. Closer relatives of the modern species first appear circa 1.2 million years ago in the form of B. shotansaki, commonly known as the Pleistocene wood bison. This animal was native to much of Europe and southern Siberia during the early and middle Pleistocene, where it was a very common large herbivore. By the middle Pleistocene, roughly 650,000 years ago, another highly successful species, the steppe bison, had emerged in eastern Eurasia. Formerly classified as Bison priscus, this animal would have resembled modern North American wood bison in appearance, reaching over 2 metres tall at the withers and weighing over a metric ton or 2,200 pounds. Its horns were proportionally larger than those of its modern relatives and extended laterally from the skull before curving upwards towards the tips. The species spread westwards during the second half of the Pleistocene, being a common component of the mammoth steppe faunal groups that range from Western Europe to eastern Siberia. These were mixed feeders that consumed a significant amount of browse, favouring forbs, grasses, larches and alder. Herds would have faced threats from cave lions, Homotherium and cave hyenas, as well as Neanderthals and, later, Homo sapiens. The species features quite heavily in Paleolithic cave art, where it's depicted as looking quite a lot like the modern American bison, complete with robust forequarters, a tall shoulder hump, and a shaggy mane above the head. A second bison morph also features heavily in cave art, produced after the last glacial maximum circa 18,000 years ago, one that closely resembles the living European bison B. bonassus. The origins of this species are quite controversial, with some studies suggesting it may have emerged due to hybridization events between the aurochs and steppe bison, while the most recent findings indicate that B. bonassus diverged from B. priscus over 100,000 years ago. Genetic testing has found that European bison were present from Spain to the Caucasus during the last glacial maximum, living alongside B. priscus. Unlike that species, B. bonassus has survived into modern times, although its wide European range during the earlier Holocene is now incredibly fragmented, with small populations dwelling across Eastern Europe and the Caucasus. These can be differentiated from their American cousins by their lighter yet taller build, more sparse body hair on the head and forequarters, as well as a longer tail and horns. Bulls can reach 6.9 feet tall at the shoulder and almost a metric ton in mass, feeding on grasses, sedges and herbs, as well as browsing on leaves, twigs and bark. These animals live in female-dominated groups, with associated bulls living as satellites to the herd. While B. bonasus was developing in Europe, eastern Siberian populations of the steppe bison crossed over the Bering Land Bridge into Alaska and the Yukon between 195,000 and 135,000 years ago. These would later enter the more central regions of the continent after the melting of the Laurentide ice sheet circa 130,000 years ago. From this stock developed the mighty bison latifrons, an enormous animal that was the largest member of the clade bovina. Bulls stood up to 8.2 feet tall at the withers and typically weighed about 1.2 metric tons, with very large individuals reaching 2 metric tons or 4,400 pounds. The horns were also significantly larger and more upward curving than those of the living American bison, reaching over 2 meters across from tip to tip. The oldest known fossils of this animal hail from Colorado roughly 120,000 years ago, with B. latifrons ranging widely across North America from southern Canada to Mexico. It was an adaptable bovine that shifted its predominantly grazing diet based on location, with forest-dwelling populations consuming a higher amount of browse. It died out during the late Pleistocene circa 13,000 years ago, alongside many other North American megafaunal mammals, although not before giving rise to Bison antiquus. This species was the direct ancestor of the modern American bison, but was notably more massive, with longer limbs, a more elongated skull, as well as a more browsing-focused diet. A very common herbivore, B. antiquus would have been hunted by American lions, Smilodon fatalis, direwolves and humans. The living American bison, B. bison, first developed from antiquus at the very end of the Pleistocene circa 10,000 years ago, with a bulkier build than its European cousin, complete with shaggier fur, more prominent shoulder humps and smaller horns. As predominantly grazing animals, their heads are also set lower to the ground. 2 subspecies are acknowledged, with these being the plains bison, creatively classified as bison bison bison, and the wood bison, B. bison athabascae. The former was once present across an enormous range that encompassed southern Canada as well as much of continental United States and northern Mexico. Present in great herds, at the time of first European contact, there are estimated to have been about 25 million plains bison, although due to the effects of westward expansion, hunting and ranching, this overall total had dropped to less than 600 individuals by the 1880s. Today, thanks to conservation efforts, plains bison can be found in small pockets across the western United States, Alaska and southern Canada, with perhaps the most well-known population being a herd of 4,800 individuals that live in the Yellowstone National Park, where they are stalked by grey wolves, the occasional grizzly bear and bothersome tourists, who often get too close to the bovines and get tossed into the air for their trouble. Meanwhile, the wood bison possesses a more northerly range, with its original habitat including much of the boreal forest regions of Alaska and northwestern Canada. It's a larger animal than the plains bison, with bulls reaching 6.6 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing up to 2,600 pounds. Their hair is also often darker and woollier, with their increased body mass helping the subspecies to survive the harsh winters present across its range, as well as aiding in the removal of deep snow in order to find food. In contrast to the European bison, the North American species more readily hybridizes with domestic cattle, which has been detrimental to the overall recovery of the animal. The final lineage within the genus Bos includes the formidable Gaur and its relatives, which were endemic to South and Southeast Asia. Formerly considered to be part of the genus Bibos, this clade is now placed firmly within Bos itself. The most famous member is the incredible Gaur or Bos gaurus, the largest of all modern bovids, native to India, Nepal, Bhutan and much of Southeast Asia. This massive, highly muscular bovine looks like one of those almost geometric 19th century paintings of farm animals, but real. Bulls can stand at a towering 6.8 feet tall at the shoulder and tip the scales at 1.5 metric tons or 3,300 pounds. Males range from dark brown to black, with their muzzles and lower legs being cream coloured. Females are significantly smaller with lighter brown coats. Both sexes possess curling horns and large ears, as well as prominent foreheads and fleshy dewlaps on the chest and neck. Like earlier members of Bovidae, Gaur are generally forest-dwelling animals and are mixed browser grazers, feeding on leaves, stems and grasses. Like other boss species, these bovines dwell in female-dominated herds, usually with a single solitary bull that lives on the fringes of the group. Once possessing a wider range that spanned the Indian subcontinent, all of Southeast Asia as well as southern China, the Gaur is now limited to patches of relatively undisturbed forest in often hilly areas. In regions where these animals have little contact with humans, they are surprisingly skittish despite their massive, beefy builds. Although in Southeast Asia, where human-Gaur interactions are more frequent, these bovines can be highly aggressive. Aside from humans, B. gaurus has few natural predators due to its size and power, with leopards and dhole packs occasionally preying on calves, while fully grown adults are sometimes vulnerable to attack from tigers and saltwater crocodiles. The species is currently classified as vulnerable due to habitat loss and hunting. It's a close relative of the banteng, Bos javanicus, which is native to a very patchy range across Southeast Asia and Indonesia. Looking like a smaller, more lightly built version of the Gaur, banteng originated during the Middle Pleistocene and were inhabitants of ancient Sundaland. Occurring in a wide variety of habitats, this animal was also domesticated by humans at least 5,000 years ago. Utilised for their meat, which is described as being soft and tender, these barley cattle are docile and can be fed on low-quality fodder. They have also been introduced to the Coburg Peninsula of the Australian Northern Territories, where a feral population of up to 10,000 animals wreak havoc on the local ecosystem. The final member of the B-Bos lineage is the possibly extinct Cupre Bos sovelli, also known as the forest ox. The last known sighting of a wild individual took place in 1969, which is not good news. It was once native to Thailand, Cambodia, Laos and Vietnam, reaching as far north as Yunnan Province, China. Sadly, despite being the national animal of Cambodia and having deep cultural ties to the country, it seems like we may have already lost this species of bovine. And there you have it. I've now covered the entire subfamily Bovidae. Unfortunately, many of the species mentioned in this video are classified as either vulnerable or endangered, with their habitat supplanted by agricultural land ironically intended for their domesticated relatives. Conservation efforts have helped in most cases, but wild populations are often patchy and scattered. And on that bleak note, thanks for watching everyone. For the next episode I'll be covering the origins of another group of herbivores that, like the bovids, tend to be somewhat overlooked, with these being the early hadrosauroids. See you again soon. Cheerio.